Hi, I'm excited to talk to you today about the astrology of the latter part of this week from March 26th, Wednesday, through Friday, March 28th. There is a lot going on in this eclipse window. It's always a particularly potent astrology when we're in between eclipses, like we are right now. It's always quite active. But this eclipse window, this 2 week period, is a little extra. The one of the biggest things that I want to talk about today is Venus, which is about to move into Pisces, retrogress into Pisces. Venus is retrograde right now, and it is moving backwards. She is moving backwards, and she will come into a connection with Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. So this is just one of the things that is happening during this powerful eclipse window. So I'm going to talk about all of it and we can sort of put it together as we go. But yeah, let's start with this Venus moving into Pisces, which happens today. And Venus will be in that conjunction with Neptune for the next few days. So this can leave us with a sort of a feeling of a dreaminess. There's a real dreamy quality to this. But dreaminess can have a couple different flavors, right? Like one is longing. And there's something about the 29th degree point that is especially potent. It's the anaretic degree, the critical degree, the mastery degree. It's called many things, but it's extra potent in any sign. And in Pisces, it's a little extra because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. And, we're hearing a lot with Pisces and Aries energy right now about endings and beginnings. And it can be easy enough to just say words like endings, but they can be quite heavy in the moment, right? Even if it's not something incredibly profound like moving or leaving a job or leaving a relationship, it's likely not something like that. In a way, it is more likely to be letting go of the end of a vision, the end of a dream, the end of a plan, the end of an era. And that can be quite heavy. So, again, dreaminess can have different feelings, different flavors to it. And sometimes I think Venus at 29 degrees of Pisces conjunct Neptune makes me think more of the word longing. There can be a real longing for, yes, things that we're letting go of, but also a real longing for real connection. Venus is exalted in Pisces. It's Venus's favorite place to be. So we take all those Venusian themes and kind of turn them up a notch. So it's not just love, it's unconditional love, right? It's not just compassion, it's healing, it's forgiveness. And so all of those themes could be coming to the surface right now. We could be having a lot of feelings, a blurring of the lines, of the boundaries between self and others. It can be very sensitive. We can be feeling very sensitive at this time on all the levels, on all the things that that means, right? We can be sensitive. It's also making me think about Mars in uh, Cancer here, which we'll talk about in a second, but maybe let me just circle it because this is the healing signature too. And just also sort of like a wounds being triggered signature as well. I just want to make this a little smaller because now I want to draw in here as well that we are also having right now Chiron squaring Mars in Cancer. So we have Mars here in Cancer after a pretty powerful retrograde this year that I don't think we should forget about, because now that Mars is moving direct, still in the signs that he was retrograde, we're sort of getting some forward movement for what we worked on and what we thought about during that Mars retrograde. But right now, these few days, the end of this week, we also have Mars squaring Chiron, and there's some healing signatures to that. Um, wounds sort of being a bit triggered. Let me make that big again. There we go. Yeah, it can be a bit reactive. It can be a bit defensive or vulnerable. Let's wrap up the conversation about the Venus Neptune conjunction, and then I'll move on to this Mars Chiron. But just around that sensitive feeling is what brought me here. It's almost like we're just a little bit raw. And that can lead to amazing, wonderful healing. It can also lead to sometimes those wounds being irritated in a way that just feels a little difficult. It can also just be a very artistic signature. The Venus can be creative. It's a really way to use this energy. Negative escapism. We can sort of be drawn to, go into stuff like this, whether that's overdoing it with drinking or any of that. So be aware of that. Use of that signature would be music, movies, video, kind of of other way. And sensitivity can also be used in ways for spiritual connection, for connecting with the divine, within, without, however you see it. So it's a powerful signature, it's a positive signature, and it's very, very deep. And at the same time, we have Mars square Chiron. And again, this is more potential for healing with a signature like this. But with the signature being in Aries, Chiron in Aries, and Mars in Cancer, it's like wounds around our ability to be assertive could come to the surface. Wounds around our ability to go after what we want, to live the way that we feel is best, could come to the surface. And I think that's interesting to be happening at the same time as that that reflection that's happening with all these retrograde energies. Mercury is retrograde right now as well. So there's a lot of sort of revisiting energy, reconsidering, perhaps reconnecting with patterns from the past, with people from the past, and all of that coming up around the same time as sort of wounds around our ability to assert ourselves is kind of an interesting combination. You know, I think we could be feeling quite vulnerable at the end of this week. Some people might be a bit defensive. Everyone sort of experiences vulnerability differently, right? Everyone sort of reflects these different signatures differently. Some people get scared and are overly reactive. Some people might just be more defensive or more quiet. But this is a time for us to really be thinking about where we're going, where we're heading, letting go of what isn't right anymore to make room for what's next, even if we don't know exactly what that is. And I think we need to really keep in mind, too, this South Node in Virgo, which is extra important because it's the eclipse cycle that we're in right now. We just had this eclipse in Virgo, and this is all about letting go of perfectionism, letting go of being too hard on ourselves, letting go of needing to understand all the details before we move ahead. It's letting go of being too critical on others. How can releasing that signature, or, releasing that signature, letting go of those more negative manifestations of the Virgo signature, lead us into a higher Pisces energy, where we're moving into the new without knowing exactly what it is, but trusting ourselves, trusting the path, trusting that we're where we're supposed to be, that when we listen to our inner guidance along the way, when we move toward what lights us up and away from what feels wrong, we'll continue to be aligned with that right path. I think this is a really great time to slow down and be intentional it can be really busy between eclipses, and that's where we are now. There can be a lot of action and activity in the world. It can be very busy in the news, in the collective. As we've seen, that's given us all a lot to work with, a lot to process. And it can be busy in our lives as well. I think Friday is especially interesting because the moon will move over all of these planets in Pisces and the beginning of Aries. It's just a very busy lunar day. So a lot of different feelings on Friday. And then on Saturday, we have the eclipse, which I will talk about soon. But just a heads up that there is that solar eclipse on Saturday morning, very early Saturday morning. It is visible for the New England states, basically. If you're in the United States, I'll do a separate video about this. But it's kind of interesting because the eclipse is going to be at sunrise. So that's sort of a unique signature. I think it's in Maine, the sun will actually rise eclipsed. So they're saying it will look like sort of a double sunrise because we'll just see the sort of two little horns and the middle will be eclipsed as the sun rises. So that's very, very unique. If you happen to be in those areas, I will do more about that. But here we are in between those eclipses with this Venus retrograde energy, Mercury retrograde energy, all of it in Pisces and Aries, the endings, the beginnings, which are just words but are actually heavier than that in practice. You know, Mars in Cancer for months, This is Mars has a challenging time in Cancer. Mars doesn't, we all might not be able to feel quite as confident or motivated, worthy as we normally do. But that's all been coming up for a reason. It's all been coming up for us to look at different things. And that's the fun of astrology, is using it to process as a tool for introspection, as a tool for thinking about your life and thinking about the world and thinking about yourself and your growth. We are in such a large period of change right now with the outer planets changing signs. You know, Jupiter in Gemini right now keeps reminding us of what we don't want more than what we do. So, you know, I think the outer planets are sort of a little out of alignment right now, too, is sort of something I'm thinking about. I think things will feel more pleasant when Uranus has moved into Gemini and Pluto and Uranus are in a trine. And then also when Neptune moves into Aries and there's a sextile between that. And we'll be working with that for a while. And right now we're switching. Right now we're moving between energies, and that can be a little unnerving. So I think I always try to be positive, and there is so much positivity here. There's so much that we're working on, but it might feel kind of heavy right now. And that's why I said that I needed a minute. I needed a minute to process all of this astrology. We have everything so clumped up here in Aries and Pisces. It's just wild. And so I didn't do a video for a couple days. I'm also working on April horoscopes. I'm in the middle of those if you'd like to check them out on my channel. It's also a great time to look at March, which are still up as well, of course. But yeah, I just needed a minute to sort of feel all of this astrology and not talk about it just for a few days because there is so much going on. There are those endings and those beginnings. And it's sort of a back and forth process. Like we get something new started and then it's like, wait, I have to go back. Let me tie up this loose end. Another good thing to do though, this reminds me with this Virgo energy, is just to organize, to clean and to organize. And I did a little bit of that the last few days too, while I wasn't making videos. And yeah, it's a good time to let go of that perfectionism, that overdoing, over planning, and being too hard on yourself in general. So it's an exciting end of the week. It's a very contemplative time, but also very active at the same time. So that gives us a lot to do. I will definitely be back on with more information about this solar eclipse on Saturday, which ends the Aries Libra eclipse cycle, to talk more about that. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you have a great day. I will be back again tomorrow.